Would you like me to begin now?
Yes, we can begin now. I will translate in Chinese. Because my English is not as good as you imagine, maybe I will try my best.
I have a PowerPoint. I'm not sure how to, if I see the PowerPoint, will you be able to see it?
Yes, I can see it, but probably I need to get close.
Do you have the authority to share, Gene? Has he given you the authority to share?
I thought
She
that
already tried before.
Oh, okay. We can't see it right now.
Let me try one more time. Share screen. Maybe this.
There we go. Now we see it.
Oh, okay. Let me get the thing started here. And let me start a timer. I'll try to do this in 20 minutes, but you can stop me if you need to. It's a pleasure for me to be able to share with you at least a little bit about the work of the church, the Lord's work in Guatemala. In Spanish, we say Guatemala, but I'll say it in English, which is usually just kind of Guatemala. I'll share just a little bit about the history of the work. Then we'll look more at what we were involved with and hopefully have time to lead into what we continue to be involved with both in Guatemala and around the world.
今天晚上非常高兴，我有这个机会跟大家 share 我在瓜地马拉的服饰。我今天会先讲一下这个我瓜地马拉服饰这个历史。瓜地马拉它是用英文讲和西班牙语的发音稍微有所不同，但是你都知道这个美丽的国家。
This says Guatemala 1975 to 2021. We moved to Guatemala in 1975. I'll share a little bit about before that time. And we left in 2007, but I continued to make, at least until COVID hit, I made 3 trips yearly back to Guatemala.
我是1975年来到瓜地马拉服侍的，然后2007年回到了美国。但是我回到美国以后，每年在疫情以前，起码有3次的访问瓜地马拉。
Since Henry is translating, and that's a good thing, I'm going to go a little bit faster. I didn't allow for translation when I put this together, so I may run through these a little bit faster.
我可能这个东西不需要什么这些翻译，所以说我会很快的过一下。
Guatemala is in the Western Hemisphere, as we are here in Searcy, Arkansas. It's between North and South America, so it's usually considered to be Central America. This shows Guatemala. The arrow points to the city of Quetzaltenango that is known with the indigenous name of Xela. And I'll probably use both those terms to refer to the same city.
You need I translate, you just have a pass through this.
Within the whole country of Guatemala, the number of members of the Churches of Christ is about 0.13%. That's not 13%, that's 0.13%. And the size of Guatemala is slightly smaller than Arkansas, about the size of Ohio, if you are familiar with that.
我觉得弟兄你可以翻译啊，中介一下。
对，瓜地马拉它这个地方就是大概跟 Ohio 那么大，还没有阿肯色大。大概它的 Church of Christ 只有0.13%，因为这些都有数字，我想大家大概都能看得明白。我简单跟你们再说一下。
Just a few pictures of Guatemala. And I just got a message that my internet is unstable. Lots of
这有放了关
volcanoes,
于瓜地马拉的一些照片。
mountains and coast as well. This is the coastal plain, as we would call it. Black sand beaches.
这是有山有海边。
Colonial town, volcano that is in eruption.
这可能是火山爆发的，刚才是那个以前殖民地的一些情况。
The first missionaries for the Churches of Christ to move to Guatemala were in 1959. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Protestant
最早的
Christianity,
Church of Christ 来到瓜地马拉是59年的时候。
Protestant Christianity arrived in the 1880s. The country was divided among 4 groups that was known as a comity agreement, where they wouldn't go into each other's territory. By the 1930s, that no longer existed as new groups arrived. By 1950, there were it was less than 3% evangelical Christians in Guatemala. However, there now is considered to be about 30% of Protestant evangelicals, including the Churches of Christ in that number.
新教来到瓜地马拉是1880年，但实际上的话，evangelical 福音派的很少的比例，然后直到现在的话有大概30%的比例。
The Churches of Christ, as I said, arrived in 1959, the first missionaries. Jerry Hill and his family, that's not the same Jerry Hill that some of us may know from here in Searcy, but Jerry Hill was extremely influential in Guatemala and other places in Central and South America. Bill Richardson may have spoke of him last week.
我知道上周可能 Bill 博士可能说过这个 Jerry Hill， 这 Jerry Hill 并不是 Searcy 这个 Jerry Hill， 他是第一个到瓜地马拉1959年的 Church of Christ 的 member 到这里。
Other missionaries arrived in the 60s and 70s, also before we arrived. The Dan Cokers, the Joe Lees, Bob Waldrons, Tom Martins, Health Talents International, who actually after our arrival, and there were others as well.
还有一些人比我们来的更早。
I don't think I have time to talk about methodology right now and how that was done. When we arrived, we worked with the Quiche team, a group of 5 families, I guess it was, in medical evangelism from 1975 to 1982. We were all missionaries, Churches of Christ missionaries, and most missionaries were called out of Guatemala in 1982 due to the guerrilla warfare, civil war. But we returned in 1987, working almost exclusively in Spanish at that time. Originally, we worked in the Quiche language. This was
刚才说的意思就是说他以前都是医疗的方式去宣教的。Go ahead.
This was our group, initial group that we called the Quiche team. The work among the Quiche Indians have their a lot of what's called Christo-paganism or Christo-paganism. It still was in existence. This is a high place up on a mountaintop where the shamans are burning incense to some of the local gods. A Catholic church building in the background where the shamans practiced Christo-paganism on the front steps as well as inside. The Quiche family. This is a medical campaign. That's actually me there. The church or Churches of Christ in Guatemala. Some of this information you saw earlier, about 15.5 million inhabitants, 0.13% members of the Churches of Christ. There are about 300 congregations of the Churches of Christ and some 20,000 Christians, members of the church. That comes out as an average of about 67 per congregation. That doesn't say it on this slide, but some people think there are many more than that, but I think that's a conservative figure. This is a map of Guatemala with the 22 states, our departments as we call them. The little dots look like pepper spilled on it actually represent the congregations. Most of them are in this part of Guatemala. And this is a blow up of that other area, shows where they're concentrated. Guatemala City, near the Mexican border, the Quiche area, Quetzaltenango or Xela, and the the southwestern coastal plain. And this just shows the states or departments where most of the Christians are located. And this information has been shared previously. Quetzaltenango, the city of Quetzaltenango. Approximately 200,000 people within the city. The metro area is bigger. The elevation is 7,600 feet above sea level. It's in a valley. And the population is about half indigenous in the cultural sense. They may speak Spanish, at least as a second language, but culturally they're still indigenous. And it's considered the second city of Guatemala, although it's much smaller than Guatemala City.
在瓜地马拉第二大城市，很多当地的都是一些土著人，1/2的都是土著人，都是一些说西班牙语的那些真正的当地人。Go ahead.
The city of Quetzaltenango or Xela is at the base of that far volcano, and this is just another. Well, actually, it's the same volcano you saw earlier erupting. The city center, or I should say, this Central Park. The local congregation in Quetzaltenango, actually there are several local congregations, but we began working with one in 1987. We also continued to work with a indigenous community that is church planning in a rural area that was not too far away at the same time we worked in Quetzaltenango. This was a meeting place, one of the meeting places. We were rented all places, but this was one of the meeting places. And this is the group we eventually had. This is actually an outdoor shot taken about 1992, I would think. Our baptisms were done in almost exclusively in some hot baths where you just rent a space for a short period of time. By 2001, we began another work in in Quetzaltenango. This was a warehouse that we rented before we did any renovation. And this was the group from the initial church. Several families joined us in establishing another congregation. A different meeting area. This was our family at about that time. Another baptism, 3 young people, and this took place in 2006. The man in that baptism is my coworker who I've worked with since 1987. This is the group that was meeting, the church that was meeting by 2007 in a rented hotel hall. It's slightly larger a year later. It was even larger here, but you only see a part of of those gathered together. And then this in 2015. This was still a different meeting place, another hotel. This is one of the elders and his wife at a seminar that we held. This is the elder I mentioned earlier, Everardo, and his wife, Mayra. This is Everardo and Mayra's daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter. The daughter, Damaris, is my coworker in the online work that I'll talk about in a few minutes. In the metro area of Quetzaltenango or Xela, there now are about 12 congregations. When we initially arrived, there was one congregation of about 50. We didn't establish, or I should say, plant those other 11 churches, but we were instrumental in a couple of them. Altogether, there are between 1,000 and 1,500 Christians in the members of the Churches of Christ in the Quetzaltenango area. That metro population is a little bit over 250,000, which means about 0.5% are members of the Churches of Christ. This was a meeting, actually it was our going away, a surprise going away in 2007 when Christians gathered from several congregations. But just to give you an idea of the number, there were about 800 there that day. This was a picture taken of that local congregation when I returned for one of my return trips, maybe 3 years ago. We also started a work between those two works in Xela in the town of Huehuetenango. I'm not going to make many comments. There's just a few slides, and we'll go through those. In 1993, we realized the need to train leaders. And a brother by the name of Ken Shoup came down to join our work. He and his wife, Eileen, were only able to stay 2 or 3 years, but he was the impetus behind our starting the Western Bible Institute. It's a non-traditional school. It's not a resident school. May say a little bit about it there. The reason, well, it's important for the work there. Began in 1993. It's, as I said, non-traditional, non-residents. The leaders are trained without asking them to move out of their home communities, to leave their families. They come in 1 week per quarter, basically, for studies. The undergraduate program is about 2 years in length, consists of 20 courses. In the 27 years since it began, we've trained leaders from at least 80 different congregations in Guatemala. At least 230 have graduated. I think it's quite a bit more than that. 250 or more than 250 have received classes. Some didn't finish their course. I've written 60 courses. And the 2 more courses, actually, I had planned to write 3 new courses a year till I got to 60, and I've reached 60, so I imagine that rate will slow down. The work continues, even though we're not there anymore, with Guatemalan coworkers who do the teaching. The 27th class graduated last September. Another one began in October. There's always 2, a first-year class and a second-year class. Additionally, there's some night classes. There's one for men, one for women, plus a graduate course. About 80, well, more than 82 students are enrolled in the graduate program, which Everardo teaches. And there's some satellite places where classes are taught as well. This was our first graduating class, actually, before graduation. We have a small facility. It's an Adobe house. We can't really seat very many. This was the group of 2001, another grad class. This is one of the classes when I go down to teach for a week, teach new course 3 times a year. This is really more than we can accommodate, but it was a good class. This shows the inside. The tables are picked up and the chairs at night, and foam rubber mattresses are thrown on the floor. Some of the men who are taking an exam, final exam at that time. Here's our eating place. A sister there that cooks all the meals for the men. It's only limited to men at this part. The satellite schools, the night schools, we have women's classes as well. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our 25th anniversary with the first group graduating from an additional 20 courses. And I'll briefly show you that graduating group. We gave them all t-shirts with our logo. These are the 3 men who do the teaching, Everardo on the right, Obdulio in the middle, and when I'm there, I teach as well. And this was the group before the graduation time. Looks like I've gotten to my 20 minutes. I'll try to wrap up. Graduate courses that we offer, both online. These are just a few of them that we've written. I'll go through. I'm not going to talk about my role right now, nor that. The Institute website, one in Spanish and the one in English, is westernbibleinstitute.com. Our goal was to train English and Spanish-speaking leaders, as well as those who hope to become leaders among the churches of Christ worldwide. Of course, being online now, we also reach those who are not members of the churches of Christ. So I'll skip through these because of the time as well. There are definite advantages by doing the online approach. But again, I'm not going to take time to read those at the moment. Just have to scroll through these. Okay, briefly online. This is our web page. In the last week, this shows where our English students have, those who have accessed the website. Largest number from India, a good number from Nigeria, also Kenya, Liberia, Ghana, Tanzania, lots of African countries, and the Philippines is also included in that. In terms of students, our largest number is actually from Nigeria, but we have a 16% from India, 27% from Ghana. So actually Ghana is our largest number. This is a Spanish number of students in Latin America. The largest number is from Mexico, but Venezuela, Guatemala, Nicaragua also have large percentages. Altogether, we have 4 websites. We have one for English speakers who are not members of the Churches of Christ. We have 2,123 who have at least begun studies there. The WBI is for members of the church in English, and there's 444. In Spanish, you see those numbers also reflected. IBO is members of the Churches of Christ. Briefly, future. I have still 10 courses I need to translate from Spanish into English and post online. I also hope to continue to enrich the courses with supplementary materials for online and review and revise those in the general program is what we call the first 20 courses. And that's what I have. So Henry, I'll turn it back over to whoever is in charge at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. I will stop the